saw that how they've changed. Similar, but have changed over time. So he really used a lot of that information along the coast right here and really figured out how natural selection works. And it did take him, after return, about 23 years before he even wrote his book. It took him a while to think. And I don't even really consider Darwin a scientist. He wasn't. He was an observer. He didn't do any science. He just looked at things, wrote things down, compared. He's brilliant. I've read his book multiple times, and it's amazing after what he did. Okay, so that's kind of natural selection. And then from that, natural selection, you can infer 3 distinct items from all of that information. First one, obviously, is struggle for existence. Okay. Everything wants to survive, everything wants to live, and so in order to do that, they have to adapt really well. That's the struggle. You have a lot of non-random survival, which means organisms have been well adapted, they can really survive. It's not just a random survival. They have certain adaptations that allow them to survive. And then that leads us to natural selection, which is pretty much differential success in reproduction. It's a really succinct way to put it. Only certain things can reproduce. And if they reproduce more of their own. And so that's why forms change over time. And so I just kind of put this little cladogram of elephants and kind of how they've changed kind of over time, kind of what they've done. And so it's kind of just another.
That's cool.
Yeah, by the way, if you haven't known, they pulled the mammoth out of Siberia, and they're actually going to clone a mammoth here very soon.
Really?
Yeah, actually they're gonna be able to do it.
Oh my gosh, when are they doing it?
They're doing it right now.
Oh wow. When is it gonna be?
They are still trying to figure out how to do it, because what they're gonna have to do is they take what they did is they got the skin cells from the mammoth, and they're extracting the DNA, and they're gonna stick it into, I think it's an African elephant, into an egg of an African elephant, and that's how it's gonna give birth.
Wow.
Yeah, it's gonna be kind of, may have mammoths walking amongst us.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Species.
Yeah, and that's what they're doing. And see, that's what they're trying to figure out how to do this, because when the pandas go extinct, which they are going to be extinct here in the next 20 years probably. It's like, how are we going to get more? Let's do some cloning. Yeah. And so knowing that evolutionary background allows modern scientists to figure out the best way to do it. So it's kind of a neat little thing.
I like modern science.
Yeah, it's quite interesting kind of what's going on. Okay, let's see here, let's move on. A few other things in here about evidence for evolution. I'm assuming this will probably pop up. Nothing was very specific in the outline or anything, but I'm assuming there's probably always something about evolution and natural selection. The one thing is biogeography. What this pretty much is just distribution of species. If you look in Australia, you have the sugar gliders, marsupials, flying squirrels that are found in North America. Okay, they look almost exactly alike, except for obviously one's a marsupial, one is a placental. But what this tells you is that in Australia and where they're found in North America, very similar environments, very, very similar. And so what that shows is that organisms adapt to an environment no matter where they are at in the world. And they adapt similar characteristics to adapt to those conditions. Okay. Same thing is found on islands versus mainland. That's kind of where Darwin worked with his finches. The finches in the Galapagos Islands were very similar to the finches on the South American mainland. Slight differences because they adapted a little bit differently. They had a different environment there, but there were similarities between those two. So that's just biogeography, just kind of across the globe, you see similar adaptations. Another one is the fossil record. This really pops in a lot. And what you see is, looking at the fossil record, a lot of succession of forms. You kind of see, I'm going to show you a slide of the horses later on, how horses have evolved over time. The mammoths, by using, or the elephants, using fossils, you can kind of see how they've changed. I believe this is the horse right here. These are the horse fossils. And kind of over time, you kind of see kind of how they've changed, going from, four-toed horse into through, you know, the Eocene all the way through the Pleistocene, which is about 100,000 years ago, they've gone to the single toe. That was what they walk on. And so you can kind of see successive forms over time. And going from molars, because horses, they run on a single toe. And so that's kind of how they've evolved. Kind of, you can see the forefeet. And so fossil records kind of show that. There's also a lot of transitional links. Sometimes they're called the missing link, but they're not really missing. And so what it is, like an example is, most people know as the Archaeopteryx, the feathered dinosaurs. Has anybody been up to the Met Museum up in Fresno to see that, the feathered dinosaur exhibit up there? Oh, it's incredible.
I'm into the tar pits.
Yeah, the tar pits, yeah. Yeah, but there's the one up there in Fresno, and they have all the feathered dinosaurs, and that's like the transitional links between the dinosaurs and the birds. So if you look at a bird, their feet have scales. Their head, like turkeys, have scales. And so they have similar genes as the dinosaurs. Birds and dinosaurs are very closely related. So like when you eat a turkey, you're really eating dinosaur. That's why they're called raptors. It's kind of the same thing. There's the evolutionary link there. And vertebrate descent, looking at the fossil record, where do I want to go with this? Oh, whales. If anybody's ever seen a blue whale skeleton, where I used to live in Santa Barbara, they were at the Natural History Museum. Huge skeleton, and what you notice is that they have actually hind legs. So they've actually come from the whales actually, they started in the ocean, moved to land as tetrapods, and then moved back to the ocean. And so they've had that extra leg there. It's kind of an interesting little thing, which then comes up to this comparative anatomy. And so there's one way you can look at evidence for evolution is homologous structures. Homologous means similar structure, but they will provide a different function. So here's like a human arm. You have the humerus, ulna, and radius, and the metacarpus and the phalanges in the hand. And then as you look through each of the other mammals, they all have those similar bones. They all have a humor, ulna, radius, metacarpal, and phalanges. We'll get to Evo Devo a little bit later on to kind of explain the development of these. But what this tells you, that these things have descended from a common ancestor. Some common ancestor, which means they have similar genes, and then from there they evolve, they diverge from that similar common ancestor, which means they all have similar genes, which will then form similar structures. Okay. Another piece of evidence is what we call a vestigial organ. That's something that you don't need anymore, like our appendix is vestigial. We have it, we can get rid of it. It doesn't cause any problem. Same thing with our tonsils. We can get rid of our tonsils, we're fine. Our wisdom teeth are vestigial. Our coccyx, which is our tailbone, is vestigial. You know when you get cold, your hair stands up, get goosebumps? That's vestigial. It's like, why? The purpose of that is to increase, your hair puffs out, which means you get more air spaces between your hair, which warms you up. So like in a lot of species that are very hairy, like apes, their hair poofs out, keeps them warm, and it also provides as a way for defense. We don't need that anymore. We're not hairy, and so we don't. That's another.
So you used to need them though?
Yeah, used to need it. Yeah, that's why we still have goosebumps. That's why we have that reaction.
That's cool.
It's vestigial. But so those genes are still working through us. Another one is embryology. If you kind of look, you can kind of see how humans, rabbits, cows, pigs, chickens, all those things in that first one at the beginning of embryonic development, very, very similar. You can't really tell the difference between any of those embryos, which means you have similar genes in action during that time. And this will all come back to Evo Devo a little bit later on. That's why some people are born with tails. Because as in development, we have a tail right here, and eventually it just disintegrates and goes away. Some people are born with webbed hands and feet, because all of these some have those, and over time the enzymes will break them down, and you don't have the webbing. Some people are born with gills, little gill slits right here, which that eventually becomes our inner ear or eustachian tubes, but you just have that little skin
It'd be
fold.
cool if we really had them.
Oh,
Oh man.
I know. Actually, I have functional ones over it. Yeah.